very happy to share the session today with Angela, who you know, and topic will be moving up knowledge. We look at more the modern nutrition aspect. And the first speaker is Ursula Schwab. I think everybody who has come here several times very well. She has a major role in developing this whole. And she Professor Tokyo, as you know, person for many studies as the editor of the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition, I think.
I used to be.
So, but she really is a great expert and great expertise in Nordic nutrition. Please.
It's good morning, everyone. So about Nordic nutrition recommendations and how the environmental sustainability was integrated. And first, a few words about the Nordic nutrition recommendations, some practical issues, and then I'm going to move on to the recommendations itself. So these recommendations are being updated about every 10 years, and the current edition is the sixth one. And the previous editions were in 2013 and 2004. And Nordic Council of Ministers is the one that is funding the project. And they obviously have some instructions what to take into account. And in 2013, we included physical activity. And in the latest edition, we included environmental sustainability. We were supposed to include sustainability in a larger context, but at the quite beginning of the work, we realized that it's too much, and we concentrated on environmental sustainability, and the other dimensions of sustainability are to be included in national recommendations like food production and animal welfare. Here's the organization. So here in the NNR committee, there were 2 members from each Nordic country, and there were also one observatory member from each Baltic country. So for the first time, the Baltic countries were involved as well. Then there was the steering committee appointed by the Nordic Council of Ministers, and there was one representative from each Nordic country in this group. Then we had an international scientific advisory group, and then we had authors, so the responsible people for specific nutrients and specific food groups, and they were looking at the literature and provided us with a comprehensive review that we could set up the recommendations. And then we had the Systematic Review Center that produced 9 de novo qualified systematic reviews to our use of topics that we knew that there's new evidence, but not recent qualified systematic reviews. So the qualified systematic reviews were the main scientific foundation in the NNR 2023, and we were able to include about 100 qualified systematic reviews. And then, as I already mentioned, the Systematic Review Center produced 9 de novo qualified systematic reviews. So no single studies were included, and it was not a matter whether someone liked some studies and did not like some other studies. This was really a qualified process, a very, very highly scientific process. About the dietary reference values, all dietary reference values were recalculated for the first time in the NNR. This was partly due to the harmonization process that we also had within the context, for example, the recommendations in the North America, so the United States and Canada. And we also took into account the recent work by European Food Safety Authority. And 7 nutrients received the DRV for the first time in the NNR. And from vitamins, there were vitamin K, iodine, and pantothenic acid. And then there was choline. And on minerals, there were manganese, molybdenum, and fluoride. And the DRVs are used for planning and assessing diets of groups of people. They are not meant for assessing a diet of an individual. And we have reference values for energy, then recommended intake range of macronutrients, and then we have reference values for micronutrients, so average requirement, required intake, adequate intake, provisional AR, and chronic disease risk reduction. And it all starts with the nutrient recommendation in a certain population, and the AR is set there where 50% of the population gets that certain nutrient enough, and 50% of the population needs more to get to stay healthy related to that nutrient. And the RI is set so that it's AR plus 2 standard deviations. So 97.5% of that certain population get enough of that nutrient to stay healthy, but 2.5% of the population need more that specific nutrient. And we have these 3 new DRVs in the NNR 2023, so adequate intake, provisional average requirement, and chronic disease risk reduction. And here you see the relation of provisional AR to AR. There's more uncertainty. There's reason why we couldn't give an AR, so that's why it's called provisional AR, and there's some more flexibility because of the lack of solid evidence, but there was enough evidence to set a provisional AR goal. And the relation of AI and provisional AR is similar as AR and RI. So AI is a provisional AR plus 2 standard deviations. Then chronic disease risk reduction was used only for sodium and further for salt. It has very little to do with the body needs, but it's a level that if you exceeded it frequently for a longer period of time, it increases the risk of chronic diseases. Regarding micronutrients, there were no changes in the recommended intake ranges. So these are very familiar with all of us. So fats 25 to 40% of energy intake, and 45 to 60% of carbohydrates, and 10 to 20% of proteins. And the recommendation for saturated fatty acids and added and free sugars is less than 10% of energy intake. And the recommendation for dietary fiber is at least 3 grams per megajoule, so at least 25 grams for females and at least 35 grams for males per day. And something is missing in this table, and it is the proportion of unsaturated fatty acids of the total fat intake, and that's supposed to be at least 2/3. And in children below 2 years of age, there were no changes. So they recommended protein intake is a little bit less than in older children and adults, and in infants the proportion of fat should be a bit higher. Then food groups, meal patterns, dietary patterns. For the first time in the NNR, we have detailed food group recommendations, and we identified 17 food groups. 2 of them are lactation and complementary feeding, so there are 15 other food groups included that you see here. And then we look at dietary patterns, and we were unable to give any recommendation related to ultra-processed food and meal pattern. There's this kind of integrating table in the recommendations where we deal with health aspects and environmental aspects. And one point to be highlighted is that the health effects, they were always the primary assessment. And here you see cereals as an example. There's this kind of material from all food groups in this table. So there's first the recommendation, so at least 90 grams per day of dry weight whole grains. It's included in, it reduces the risk of cardiovascular diseases, colorectal cancer, type 2 diabetes, and premature mortality. And there's a likely further benefit of higher intakes. So first, it's always what's the role of this food group regarding health. Then the second column is about the nutrients. What's their role? And here it says regarding cereals that they contribute to fiber and thiamine, folate, vitamin E, iron, and zinc intakes. And then comes the environmental point of view. And regarding cereals, it says that there's a low climate impact, except rice, which is way more problematic regarding the environmental point of view. And then there's advice to the national authorities in Nordic and Baltic countries when they are setting their recommendations. And then the healthy and environment-friendly diet guidelines. So we should eat predominantly plant-based diet, emphasizing vegetables, fruit, berries, pulses, potatoes, and whole grains. There should be ample intake of fish and nuts, moderate intake of dairy, and we should favor low-fat dairy, and then limited intake of red meat and poultry, and minimal intake of processed meat, alcohol, processed foods containing high amounts of fats, salt, and sugar. So we should increase the intake of vegetables, fruit, and berries, and the recommendation used to be at least 500 grams per day. Now it's at least 500 to 800 grams per day, emphasizing that you get more benefit the more you eat them. And variety of vegetables, fruits, and berries are favored. Then regarding nuts, the recommendation is 20 to 30 grams per day. Fish, 300 to 450 grams per day from sustainably managed stocks. And then cereals, 90 grams per day of whole grain. And then pulses, we were unable to set any specific amount, but it stated that they should be a significant part of a regular diet. So these are the health and environmental point of view. Then we have this environment part here, and there are potatoes. There's no health effects whether we eat less or more potatoes. But from environmental perspective, in the Nordic and Baltic countries, they should have a significant role in a regular diet because they are environmental healthy. And then in moderation, milk and dairy, this is a decrease from the previous edition. So 350 to 500 milliliters per day, and low-fat dairy. And this is from the health perspective. And from the environmental perspective, we should consume preferentially lower amounts depending on the nutrients of the overall diet. I get back to this issue. And then we should decrease the intake of red meat to less than 350 grams per week. This is similar as what World Cancer Research Fund has. And this is the health principle. Then it should be considerably lower from the environmental point of view. Then regarding alcohol, there's no safe lower limit. Processed meat intake should be as low as possible. And sweets, the consumption should be limited, as well as the consumption of processed foods with high amounts of fat, salt, and sugar. And as in the to be increased slide here, we also have something in the environment point of view, and it's poultry. So no health effects whether we use more or less poultry, but from environmental point of view, it should be preferentially reduced. And then some details in food groups. So in vegetables, fruits, and berries, we should emphasize fiber-rich products and limit the products with added or free sugars. And then regarding potatoes, they should be prepared with low fat and salt. And please pay attention to the nuts and seeds section, that the recommendation is only for nuts. Seeds are to be recommended, but there's no evidence to give a daily or weekly intake level. Regarding fats and oils, at least 25 grams per day of vegetable oils or similar amounts from whole foods should be consumed, and there should be limited consumption of butter and tropical oils like coconut oil. And this fish recommendation, there's also recommendation for fatty fish that should be at least 200 grams per week. And then I promised to get back with this dairy issue. So the consumption should be lower than recommended if the intake of calcium, iodine, and B12 in the whole diet meets the recommendations. And regarding cereals, there should be limited intake of products with added or free sugars, fat, and salt. And regarding eggs, it is stated that a low intake may be part of a healthy diet for nutrient adequacy. And in the sweets section, also sugar-sweetened beverages are included, and their consumption should be limited. And alcohol, there's no safe lower limit, so no or limited intake is recommended. And for children, adolescents, and pregnant women, total abstinence is advised. So to summarize, we should increase the intake of vegetables, fruits and berries, pulses, potatoes, whole grains, nuts and fish. And here in the exchange group, we have refined cereals. We should consume more whole grain products. And butter and butter-based spreads should be replaced by vegetable oils and vegetable oil-based spreads. And high-fat dairy should be changed to low-fat dairy. And then processed foods with high amounts of added fat, salt, and sugar. We should consume more whole foods and varieties containing low amounts of added fats, salt, and sugar. And we should limit the intake of processed meat, red meat, sugar-sweetened beverages, processed foods with high amounts of added fat, salt, and sugar, and alcohol. And this is how it looks like. And you find it easily by Googling NNR 2023. And it's very, very easy to navigate the online version. You just go to contents and skip the preface. And there you could choose whether you want to look at nutrients or food groups. And if you click, for example, nutrients, then you get the selection of what's included, like vitamin C or thiamine, etc. So very, very easy to read and find. We have the one-pagers from nutrients and two-pagers for food groups. So you get easily a summary what's important related to that specific nutrient or food group. Thank you.
Thank you very much.